Said Rattlesnake, the Austin era has begun.
And he proceeded to fire me over the phone.
He's just a racist. That's just the way it is.
To getting over in wrestling, you have to be a little bit of an
He was such an intense individual. I was intimidated.
This guy's a psychopath.
Stone Cold Steve Austin is hailed by WWE as the most beloved superstar of all time. As an authentic, headstrong rebel, he saved WWE in the ratings war against WCW. Yet privately, he's anything but a hero.
Sometimes you make decisions you regret.
I'm not gonna do this.
Obviously, I'm pissed off.
There's an unilluminated dark side to Steve Austin. WWE helped sweep his numerous scandals under the rug with hush money. But this documentary sheds light on this dark side.
I was real aggressive.
If I did something to upset him, then the rage would come out, and usually it was mixed in with alcohol too.
Steve Austin grew up in Edna, Texas, a small town marked by Republican influence and racial tensions. He was quite the athlete in high school.
I was born in Austin, Texas, December 18, 1964. That's where my parents still live. Man, growing up a town of 5,000 people. I played baseball, I ran track, I played football.
Even then, he didn't mince his words or respect authority figures. Austin started college at 18 with dreams of becoming a gym teacher. However, he dropped out because, as he put it, math kicked his ass. In 1989, he made his wrestling debut, earning a measly $20. He slept and lived in his car. Over time, he made it from regional promotions in Houston and Austin to the big leagues of WCW. His tenure there brought him experience, but in hindsight, he spoke bitterly of it. WCW didn't see him as a marketable star. They fired him over the phone.
After everything that happened to me in WCW, being fired, someone saying basically, no, you're not marketable, you're not going to be successful, that's when you're starting to piss me off.
Ironically, WCW didn't see much potential in the one man who would later become the biggest star for competitor WWE.
Because the politics in WCW kept the biggest potential superstar in wrestling on the goddamn ground.
I was a guy that was always on time for work. I never played like I was hurt. If I was hurt, I was hurt. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it my way. I can do it my way, and if you get in my way, I'm gonna run your ass over.
In ECW, Austin honed his promo skills under the guidance of Paul Heyman. Shortly after, he made his debut in WWE.
Today, someone gets frustrated and they start tweeting and they put posts on Facebook and they give interviews about how upset they are and how they're being held back and how the system doesn't appreciate how great they are. And back in the mid-1990s, there was no platform. I offered Steve a platform.
I'm not gonna do this anywhere, not even in ECW. We're gonna put the US title on you, and then we're gonna take you here, and then you're the #1 contender, so then you got this world title shot. Well, all that never happened.
During this time, he faced criticism for his wrestling skills. Colleagues like Val Venus saw him as a solid wrestler, but not much more. Austin didn't take this criticism well. He was convinced he was a great wrestler, as was Vince McMahon. Austin's initial WWE ring name, Ringmaster, reflected his technical prowess, safe and masterful wrestling without flashy flips and jumps, but with intensity and reliability. However, the Ringmaster character didn't fit. Austin felt uncomfortable with this gimmick. In a conversation with Vince, he said, "I'm not the Ringmaster, I'm Stone Cold."
Steve came to me and said, "Vince, I'm just not the ringmaster." I'm okay. Who are you? So Steve came to me and says, "I'm Stone Cold."
And that's the Stone Cold truth.
Neither one of us really knew what Stone Cold was. Let's try this, let's try that. So it was the beginning of a new character.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
That was tremendous. Whoa.
Gradually, a character emerged that fit Austin perfectly. He played himself, just cranked up to 1,000. Austin is known as a controversial trash talker in real life too, which made his portrayal of the Stone Cold character so convincing.
Steve played that role perfectly because he's pretty much that guy.
Look at those eyes. Stone cold this man is.
No way anyone in the World Wrestling Federation can stop Stone Cold Steve Austin.
His authentic style mesmerized audiences invariably.
Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass.
Stone Cold Steve Austin became a cultural icon. He transcended the WWE. People that didn't even watch wrestling knew what a Steve was.
Now wrestling has a new heavyweight star. Stone Cold Steve Austin is the man.
Will you get me another beer?
It's arguably the most popular wrestler of all time.
My New Year's resolution. What? Some bitch got a Y2J shirt on, he gonna talk to me. Stone Cold Steve Austin was born pissed off.
With his new persona, Stone Cold was in hot demand. Austin infused a certain ruthlessness into his character, an attitude of not caring about others' opinions. It suited him perfectly as a heel. Later, he turned face in the legendary match against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13, still one of their favorite matches. As Austin's popularity grew, his ego kept pace. He developed great confidence in his gimmick and performances, seeing his immense success. However, behind the scenes, he came across as egocentric, which soon became evident in his dealings with other wrestlers. In 1999, Steve Austin was supposed to feud with mid-card heel Jeff Jarrett. When WWE boss Vince McMahon presented this plan to Austin, he wasn't thrilled. A moment of hesitation, and he declined, due to an alleged conflict existing between the two in real life. Jarrett criticized Austin for his 3:16 promo, calling it insensitive to religious people. Austin then lost his temper and yelled at him. It's not the first time Steve Austin behaved less like a professional and more like himself. In wrestling, you don't just refuse defeat or reject booking plans, yet Austin did so repeatedly. Like when he was supposed to work with Mark Marrow. Marrow had previously lost to Sable, and Austin wasn't keen on putting his title on the line against a wrestler who had lost to a woman, so he didn't. In the late 90s, Vince supposedly planned to pit Austin against top star Hulk Hogan. Again, Austin objected, remembering a conflict with the Hulkster during his days in WCW. Apparently, Austin envied Hogan for his standing, but that was years ago. Still, Stone Cold held onto his grudge. He doesn't forgive easily, or forget, not even the mistakes of the late Owen Hart. His ex-wife Jeannie Clark said in an interview that Austin couldn't stand Owen Hart, even after his death.
He, didn't like Owen Hart, and he wasn't really wanting to go to his funeral, and he had a resentment.
And ladies and gentlemen, yes, we're live. SummerSlam from the Continental Airlines Arena.
Owen Hart broke Austin's neck with a botched piledriver at SummerSlam 1997.
I sent him in the ropes, and we do this crazy move, and he ends up, and he's got me upside down, and he's gonna hit me with a tombstone piledriver. And there's a big problem. My head was about that far below his ass. Well, that's not good for me if you're on the receiving end, because that's gonna spike my head in the mat. Well,
Austin is hurt. And hurt badly.
Accidents happen regularly in wrestling, but such serious injuries are rare. Austin nearly died that night.
I couldn't feel anything from my neck down.
I was thinking I was never going to walk again. I remember going to the back. I sat down on a bench, and I was in a world of hurt.
Here's the ambulance people. Where are the ambulance people?
Austin couldn't forgive his opponent Owen for this mistake.
When you come that close to almost being paralyzed for the rest of your life, it really f***s your head up.
Then 2 years later, Owen suffered the same fate that Austin nearly missed after a severe fall in the ring. Many wondered why Austin didn't attend the funeral. His ex-wife Deborah later said he couldn't forgive.
I think that did change the relationship that Steve had with Owen, and I think Steve was always a little bit pissed off that Owen.
Steve had some anger, some bitterness.
Steve Austin increasingly clashed with colleagues backstage, especially with the writers. He publicly criticized booking ideas, which attracted negative attention. Hogan and Austin didn't want to work together, neither wanting to lose to the other. Austin later said he felt they couldn't have had a good match together. Vince and his creative team accepted Austin's decision and replaced him with The Rock, who went on to have a legendary WrestleMania match against Hogan. Austin, on the other hand, played a minor role at the biggest show, defeating Scott Hall.
Going into WrestleMania 18, I really thought I was starting to lose a little bit of my momentum, and I didn't really like the creative direction we were going. NWO had come in.
After WrestleMania, Austin had had enough. He didn't show up for Raw, said he needed a break.
He made the biggest mistake of his professional career.
I think about that time, a little bit of frustration was starting to set in and the wheels were starting to fall off.
Shortly after, the situation escalated. On June 10th, Jim Ross called Steve Austin and informed him that he was supposed to lose a King of the Ring match against Brock Lesnar. On Raw, and without build-up.
While I was laying there, Jim Ross calls me up and gives me credit for Monday Night Raw and says, Vince would like to see Brock Lesnar go over on me in a King of the Ring qualifier match.
Austin was beside himself. He felt frustrated, disrespected.
Really? You guys want to beat me? Man, I don't have a big head, but guys like me are pretty damn hard to find.
He later claimed he didn't mind losing to Lesnar. However, an Austin loss was something that needed to be built up big.
I told Jim, I said, well, if that's going to be creative, I said, I won't be at Monday Night Raw.
Bottom line is, creative to be a hell of a lot better than it is.
That's Stone Cold, who's, again, like I said, the most demanding, of anyone I've ever worked with.
It was more than that. It was, again, the pressure that Steve put on himself. It was eating him up. At least that's my point of view.
Austin's motivation hit an all-time low, and he grappled with one of the toughest decisions of his life. He didn't want to continue. He considered leaving WWE. One night, he decided to quit.
He took his ball and went home, and obviously, I'm pissed off.
He was the lead performer advertised to be at that event in a major venue, and he didn't fulfill his obligations. I told him to get his ass off the airplane and come to work.
It was never a one-man show. You don't do it by yourself. And to say, right in the middle of that, I'm out of here, it's not the right thing, in my opinion.
Austin turned his back on the company that made him a star, the one that was increasingly irritating him on many levels. He was burnt out, frustrated, and his body a wreck.
I was running hard. I was beat to shreds, and I was drinking a lot. And just a lot of elements going on there, and the train was about to go off track.
WWE then made fun of Austin, provoking him. For example, they said repeatedly that Austin had picked up the ball and gone home, that he had let down the fans, but he didn't let that bother him. It was good for him not to step into the ring anymore, to do something else. Just go on vacation, go hunting. As it later turned out, Austin sometimes drove around aimlessly in his car, crashing a Porsche into a building and totally wrecking it. Austin's time outside WWE was a much-needed break, but also a time adrift without a purpose.
What I did then, in my mind, was the only way I could get out and get out with my sanity. It's a rough business, and sometimes it's a rough life, and sometimes you make decisions you regret. That was one of them, and I own up to it.
A year after his WWE departure, Jim Ross sent a postcard to Austin touching his stone-cold heart. He agreed to have a conversation with Vince McMahon to bury the hatchet.
Well, Stone Cold Steve Austin is back. I brought a big fat can of whoop ass.
But Steve Austin still wasn't everybody's darling behind the scenes. He had beef with Hardcore Holly. The two had long been friends and travel partners, but after Austin's breakthrough, Holly thought he got arrogant. He behaved like a diva and no longer cared about his old friends. Similar stories are reported by various former wrestlers. There have been numerous instances of questionable behavior in public as well as in private. Moments where Steve Austin was rude or disrespectful. Allegedly, Austin associated with the big stars backstage but had little interest in less successful colleagues.
A standoffish person was Stone Cold in his own world. He was always with the top guy.
And she reveals another dark piece of information.
That Sir Austin was a racist prick, so I ain't got too much to say to him anyway.
His ex-wife Deborah talks about it in her book. Austin had peculiar friends that Deborah couldn't get along with. They were a group of white male Texans. They repeatedly used racist slang words and talked about the superior white race. Austin is said to have known this group of friends since his youth.
I'm a redneck from South Texas, you damn right, and I ain't gonna change for nobody.
While Austin has dark-skinned friends like The Rock, black wrestlers allegedly had a harder time earning Austin's respect. When a WWE employee brought her dark-skinned boyfriend into the backstage area, Austin lost his temper. And when he found out that his ex-wife Deborah was befriending a dark-skinned couple, he was furious.
He was pissed off at Deborah because she was hanging out with one of the Spurs players, one of their wives, and of course the player was black.
Sometimes his ex-girlfriend Tess watched BET, Black Entertainment Television. Austin didn't like that at all and subsequently referred to her as an N lover. However, the most serious accusation comes from former WWE wrestler Ahmed Johnson. On the night of his Intercontinental title win, he found his rental car racially vandalized.
Somebody wrote on my rental car, "Congratulations," and a fan said that they saw Stone Cold out there by my car.
There is no clear evidence of who did it, but Johnson is relatively sure that Austin was behind it.
He's just a racist, that's just the way it is. And and it's sad because, you get all these I see these little black kids with Austin 316 t-shirts on and they're supporting him, not knowing who this punk really is.
Sometime later, Steve Austin responded when fans confronted him. He dismissed the accusations as untrue and labeled them horse crap. Racism is one of the main accusations that former colleagues repeatedly bring up against Austin, but it gets worse. In 2002, Austin was arrested for assaulting his then-wife Deborah in her home in San Antonio, Texas. The two had tied the knot 2 years earlier in Las Vegas, but by then, the relationship was in shambles. On June 15, 2002, Deborah Williams called the police. Austin yelled at her not to. Despite Austin's protests, Deborah made the emergency call. Austin then ran out of the house. The police reported that Deborah was nervous because her husband is famous. The police report stated that there was a large, noticeable bump under Williams' right eye. The officers interviewed Williams about the incident. Meanwhile, Austin called the house twice and spoke with the police. Austin refused to return to the house, despite being urged to do so by the officers. It was only a month later that the district attorney for Bexar County, Texas, issued an arrest warrant against him. Austin surrendered to authorities a day later. He was charged with assault and posted a $5,000 bail to be released from jail. Austin didn't show up for 2 scheduled WWE events in Montreal and Austin, Texas. On November 25, 2002, he was sentenced to 1 year of probation, fined $1,000, and perform 80 hours of community service. After the court case, Austin told reporters, "I have issues like other people do. Everyone has good and bad days, and so do I." Austin's probation prohibited him from drinking alcohol, and he had to obtain court permission to travel outside of Bexar County. In a 2007 interview on Fox News, Austin's ex-wife Deborah said he had used anabolic steroids.
He would go into the steroid rage that would last, for hours or days or whatever, being paranoid and all that.
She said she had seen Austin taking steroids and then suffering outbursts of rage. One of the well-known side effects is a change in behavior, particularly increased aggression and irritability.
If I did something to upset him, then the rage would come out, and usually it was mixed in with alcohol too.
According to his wife, Austin had fits of rage and was paranoid.
There's drugs and there's steroids in this business.
And she revealed another dark detail. Vince McMahon paid her to stay silent for a year with large sums of money. The WWE chief knew that she could completely bring down Austin as a top star if she made the story public. The marriage to Deborah ended after 3 years. It wasn't Austin's first failed marriage. He had been divorced twice before. After his relationship with Deborah, love continued to elude him. What followed was Austin's most toxic relationship, with public mudslinging and numerous unbelievable scandals and legal battles. In 2003, Austin dated model Tess Broussard.
Hi, I'm Tess Broussard with a Kroll Show on Comedy Central.
What brought them together was their physical attraction, but things quickly went downhill. One evening they were driving around the neighborhood. Austin lost control of the car and crashed his 2003 Chevy truck into a tree. Austin suffered a broken nose, a black eye, and several contusions. In 2003, he appeared on Raw with visible bruises and a black eye, which was never explained. The injuries were a result of the accident. While Austin got off lightly, Tess suffered much worse. She sustained permanent injuries to her foot, requiring multiple surgeries and a dozen screws. Tess spent the next 3 months in a wheelchair and still has trouble walking today. Austin was drinking too much at the time. The night before his last match at WrestleMania 19, Austin paid the price.
So we're pedaling on the bicycle, and I say goodbye to Kevin. I'll go back to the Grand Hyatt where I'm staying. Everybody's staying for WrestleMania. And I get off the elevator, and all of a sudden, man, the shit hits the fan. My heart starts pounding out of my chest. Man, it wouldn't stop. And I guess it was like a anxiety attack times 20. I don't know what I'm going to do. I think, hey, man, I'm fixing to die, and WrestleMania's tomorrow.
Austin spent the night at the hospital and almost missed his last match due to health problems.
Well, basically what happened was my damn system just wigged out because I was drinking too much horse shit, not taking care of myself, and my system hit the fan.
However, the farewell match did take place in the end. The Rock defeated Austin, and with one final legendary match, Stone Cold's career came to an end.
Stone Cold Steve Austin saved the WWE from going out of business.
The most iconic figure in the history of Raw.
DTA, Rock. Don't trust anybody. From a business standpoint, Steve came along, the right character at the right time. The Austin 316 was sort of an anti-hero.
Stone Cold is the man. Stone Cold.
You want to go in the water? Give me a hell yeah.
Based on that and Steve's work ethic and his passion for the business, Steve sold out more arenas, set more pay-per-view records, more merchandising records than, you name it. Whatever the, record was to be broken, he shattered it.
With Austin's wrestling retirement, his private problems seemed to worsen. In an interview, ex-girlfriend Tess claimed that Austin had harmed her pets to hurt her. While she was away on a trip, he allegedly locked her cats in a closet before leaving the house for a few days. Her neighbor, who was looking after the house, rescued the cats, reportedly malnourished, dying, and covered in feces. Austin was angry for various reasons. Broussard had kept her past as a secret from him and lied about her age, portraying herself as younger than she actually was. It was a complicated on-off between the two. Austin was also said to have become increasingly possessive and jealous in his relationship with Tess. At Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's wedding, he repeatedly interfered in conversations when Tess spoke to other men. He was afraid she was cheating on him. Meanwhile, Austin himself was repeatedly unfaithful. When Tess found out, she confronted Austin. He should seek help for his alcohol problem and sexual perversion. The subsequent argument between the couple allegedly culminated in Stone Cold pushing her out of the car and driving off. Before that, Tess threatened to call the police, but Austin smashed her phone, she says. The bottom line is, we don't know what happened. Austin denies many of the accusations that appear in this documentary. Ultimately, as so often, it remains unclear who is really telling the truth. The truth is probably somewhat more complex.
One of the untold secrets to getting over in wrestling is you have to be a little bit of an asshole.
You have to have an attitude in this business. You got to have some failures. Hey, it's great. So there's been some people that have Cinderella stories and they get into business and they just go straight to the top and have a hunky-dory career. That just wasn't my case.
All of this is not what wrestling fans see when they hear the sound of shattered glass and the hero of the Attitude Era comes stomping out. The glass that breaks when he enters is transparent, clear, just like Austin, authentic, himself. Stone Cold is incredibly popular as a wrestling legend. Fans celebrate him not because he is a role model, but because he is who he is.
I had one hellacious ride. I loved every bit of it. I had my share of injuries, I had my share of bad times and good times, and I always got back on my horse. I had to ride off in the sunset a little bit sooner than I would have liked, but I'm the happiest son on earth right now. And that's the bottom line, because I said so.